Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Immersive Tech Talk Podcast series presented by VRD Health Tech. I'm Sherry Marion, CEO of VRD Health Tech, and we're so pleased to have our host, Professor Skip Rizzo, who will be engaging in dialogue with various experts in the digital mental health field across the course of the podcast series. Professor Rizzo will interview today's amazing guest and VRD partner, Sarah Hill of Helium. Before we start the discussion, though, let me introduce you to VRD Health Tech. VRD Health Tech is an accelerator for the adoption of immersive technology by partnering with wonderful emerging brands like Helium to market, sell, onboard, and train users in health and wellness solutions. We offer these applications to hospitals, clinics, educators, and corporations to benefit their patients, students, clients, and their community. VRD is proud to have the support and guidance from experts in virtual reality, such as our host, Professor Skip Rizzo. Skip Rizzo is a professor at USC and director of medical virtual reality. He serves as an advisor and chief science officer for our partner, Cognitive Leap, exploring methods to address attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, in children. Joining Dr. Rizzo today is Sarah Hill. Sarah Hill is a 12-time Mid-America Emmy Award-winning storyteller who's led successful media and immersive media teams for the last 25 years. Most recently is the CEO of Helium. A media technologist, Hill has a handful of patents for biometrically powered media. Her company's mental fitness products are clinically validated in 9 peer-reviewed journals, and her immersive experiences have been viewed more than 7 million times. Hill speaks around the world about the intersection of sentient and spatial computing, AI, and storytelling with EEG, heart rate, respiration, and other biodata inputs. Hill's team has earned honors from the NFL Players Association, Consumer Technology Association, P&G Innovation Prize, Mass Challenge, and a Hero Award from the International VR Healthcare Association. Hill is a former interactive TV news journalist for NBC, ABC, and CBS affiliates in Missouri, a national Edward R. Murrow, National Association of Broadcasters Service to America, National Sigma Delta Chi, and award-winning TV reporter. She spent decades covering the world's trauma in Sri Lanka, Zambia, Guatemala, Indonesia, and Congo. Helium's roots are in virtual travel for veterans. In 2013, Hill's team built a program called Honor Everywhere, which uses mobile, virtual, and augmented reality to allow aging veterans the opportunity to virtually visit their World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and women's memorials. Hill is married with 2 grown children, 3 if you count her husband. So during the interview, our participants who are joining from the webinar can directly ask a question through the Q&A window, while participants from the YouTube live stream can also ask questions in the live chat. We'll have around 10 minutes at the end to ask your questions. So now let's go ahead and turn it over to Skip and Sarah.
Hey, well, welcome everyone that's here for the live feed, and to all those that will be joining us at a later point with the recording. I just have to say I'm so excited today about this particular podcast. I've been dying to get Sarah on this for a long time now. A real admirer of her work and her life story as well, which we'll hear a little bit about. Because I'm always interested in how people get mixed up in this field. What's the inspiration? It's not, it's not something people easily gravitate to, but I often notice that once they do, they get hooked. It's addictive. So with that opening, Sarah, first off, I just want to comment on your headshot and how you were wearing a biker jacket in there.
Right.
Do you ride a motorcycle?
No, I don't. It's my moto jacket, as they say. used to ride motorcycles when we would do escorts for the honor flights in our area, the real honor flights. And there's, a couple hundred motorcycles that would come and surround these veterans as they were riding home. So that's my only motorcycle expertise. I wish maybe once I retire someday, I'll have time to ride motorcycles. But you ride, don't you?
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I've been riding since I was a kid, and somehow I'm still here to tell the story about it. And I have that same style jacket, although it's kind of, it's kind of fallen out of fashion favor a little bit, but I still wear it when I need to wear it in sunny California. I don't often need a thick coat like that.
Yeah, a moto jacket never falls out of fashion. What are you saying? I mean, right? It's
True,
always on point,
true.
And
It's
it's great,
timeless.
great to be here with you. Obviously, mutual admiration society. And one of the reasons why I got messed up in this crazy industry that we call immersive, is you. So we can talk about that later. But many years ago, I came to your office, and you were inspiring back then, and you're inspiring now. So
Well,
yeah.
thank you for that. I do remember that meeting because you were, it struck me how focused you were on the interest of veterans. And maybe we could start off with just, you giving us a little history of what you did before, how it led into this, and then a little bit on how your interest in serving the veteran population came about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think when it was. Might have been 2015 that I came to your office, and we were trying to explore a solution because we were doing live streaming tours, broadcasts. My background is as a broadcaster, from the memorials, to try to allow these veterans to virtually visit via just mobile devices and watching on an iPad. And obviously, that didn't scale because we had to get volunteers all the time to do live broadcasts, and we needed something that we could record that would allow them to feel like they were there even though they weren't there. And we'd been using Google Glass. And when Google had pulled the ability to do some of those hangouts on air or those live broadcasts, we needed an alternative. And several people pointed to Google Cardboard, and they said, you should talk to Skip Rizzo because he's doing some phenomenal work with veterans in this very space. And you were gracious to meet with me. One of my first people that I met really in the industry. And of course, you've been doing this for decades. And so it was, very inspiring to get the talk, and encouraging of, yes, you could get a camera and capture the memorials, and, then it could go, bring it to the veterans bedside in either cardboard or, that's what we had at the time. And I want to say that you might even have been the one that had suggested who we should talk to. You might have even made that intro. So obviously, very, very appreciative of that. And that ultimately launched our company, and our company's social purpose, which is, not only the purpose of Helium, but so many others have, adopted that program and are sharing it. It's a free library that's out there, which is really kind of cool. And, others are now contributing to it, which is, which is really great. Mind Immersive, Penumbra is sharing it, VRD, Neuro Rehab VR, basically every single virtual reality company is sharing these free virtual libraries, and it's always great to see everyone play well in the sandbox together.
Yeah, well, before we dig into helium specifically, let's just I want to pursue the veteran thing a little more because I hope the audience gets the phenomenal thing that you've done, and that is to give veterans the capability to be immersed in these settings of places that they would want to go to, especially, particularly older veterans, but they don't have the means or the capability to travel. And they can go to the Vietnam Wall and be in a VR headset and be there and to look around. And to me, this is a type of VR that I think is really important. We often think about, 3D graphic VR where you're interacting or shooting a gun or flying around and everything. But the capture of spherical video of real places in high fidelity, I think is a remarkable capability that we can do even with tiny little cameras. I have a Ryko camera, a 2-camera rig that I attached my motorcycle helmet one time and took a wild ride, and so you can put on the headset and be from the top of my helmet jamming around corners and stuff. I mean, it's really the vomit comet because it is kind of provocative motion in VR. But what you're doing really gives people opportunity to have experiences. And I know that you're working a little bit with the VA with I think Billy Rutherford from West Virginia VA on the honor flight experience and so on. I know that that's something that's moving along. And a matter of fact, Billy was at the American Psychological Association last week. We had a symposium, and he presented on the use of spherical video for veterans that are having difficult times going to places that we just take for granted, going to the market, going to a restaurant, a crowded restaurant, going to an outdoor concert or a fair where there's a lot of people around. And, a lot of times people don't understand that the challenges that sometimes people that are experiencing PTSD, it really limits their capability to have experiences in the real world. So, the idea of giving veterans these opportunities like you've done is really inspiring and deserves to be commended.
Well, thank you for that. But it's obviously not just me. It's, everyone in the industry who's contributing to that library, which is really cool. And their expertise, including Billy and VA Immersive. And, when you look at it, we're back in, the day in 2015 or 2016, we were losing those World War II vets at a rate of 500 a day. 500 veterans a day were passing away. And so, we were working with the honor flight programs and would get phone calls from these veterans saying that they're on too much oxygen, or they didn't have mobility to be able to physically travel there. And so that's how the program started. Sadly, we had hundreds of veterans pass away on the waiting list because we didn't have the ability to get them VR goggles fast enough. But we did get, thousands of veterans shipped kits. We continue to ship kits to them. And if there's anyone who's interested in that, contact your local VA or your local honor flight program. Sometimes even your local VFW, they can, reach out. And any other VR companies that are listening and have goggles, like if you have Quest 2s or you have, old Pico G2 4Ks, and you're wondering what am I going to do? Like, there are groups out there that could really use that hardware so that they can, view some of that software. So it's a fascinating program that everyone is contributing to, which I think is great to share it. And these are video files that you can just put on, your existing apps, your existing software, and allow other people to feel like they're there, even though they aren't there. And the stories, my background is a storyteller, immersive storyteller. They're narrated by these living pieces of history. They're narrated by, a Vietnam veteran who, lost both of his legs during the war, and a World War II veteran and a Korean veteran. And, sadly, all of the individuals that we have interviewed have not since passed away. And so those stories are so important now because they're like, you can't replicate that.
Right.
They're living pieces of history. And even though we shot them with, old jaunt cameras, the 24 different cameras set up in an array that was crazy terrible to stitch. And when you're viewing it, you can see the stitch lines, but like that was circa 2016. And now I would love, with AI, maybe there's somebody out there who'd want to help us with this, to be able to, bump up the resolutions in those videos at the memorial, so that we can still keep those stories of those narrators of the people,
Right.
those veterans, welcoming people and then sharing their story. And then, what better virtual tour guide than them, that we could, somehow bump up the resolution, because, back then 4K was, great. And now, we needed upwards of 8K. So maybe somebody's listening with that expertise in AI video who could help us with that.
Well, this stuff is so emotionally evocative. I mean, I saw this firsthand when I tested out the Penumbra World Traveler application with my mom. At the time, she was 88, and she hadn't been to Rome in like 44 years, and she was able to go into Rome in spherical video, and it had narration. It had a kind of a guided tour, and I swear to God, it brought a tear to her eye. She goes, "It was, I haven't been there." While she's in the experience, she's pointing out things. Oh, me and Carl went to this place or that place, and pointing out stuff like she was there again. And it's just, I think it's great stuff.
Mhm.
So, also, just to finish up on the vet stuff real quick, I don't know if you saw, but Disabled American Veterans, a big VA support group, just put out a video on immersive healthcare. They filmed it at the VA Immersive Summit back in June, I believe, and it's like 23 minutes. I just started watching it before this cast, and it looks pretty interesting. It really walks through the tremendous work that the VA is doing, leveraging immersive healthcare. I mean, it's like they don't want to be your dad's VA anymore. They want to bring it into the future and provide these opportunities for wide range of clinical care as well as experiential opportunities. So really fascinating stuff. I think in our show notes, I'll post the link. There's a YouTube link for this, and it's pretty amazing.
So
Okay.
and very, very pioneering work, and have definitely reduced the physical space between veterans and their memorial, and also veterans and drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms. So that is a breath of fresh air in the industry to get, as the VA says, more heads and headsets, or asses and glasses. As
Yeah.
they behind the scene.
Uh, so around all this, what inspired the idea of Helium? Where did that come from? And how did your previous experience in media and storytelling, how did that give us that story? I'm very curious. I don't know if I've heard this fully.
So it's not a linear path in any way. I was a TV reporter, and as a television reporter, you cover a lot of trauma, rapes, murders, homicides. Every single day, your chances are you're covering the worst day of someone's life, and you're doing it over and over and over again. And we went in with the trauma teams and the aftermath of the tsunami in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. I mean, some really horrific natural disasters, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, and you interview families that have lost children. I mean, it is a very difficult job, and I wasn't able to after so many years doing that over and over again. It obviously wears on you, and wore on my sleep, and so developed Helium not only for myself to heal myself, but for the people that we covered. And if you've ever talked with someone who is going through a traumatic situation, like all you want to do is just put your hands on them and try to make them feel better in some way. And what is it that we have in our tools in the aftermath of natural disasters? We give them bottled water. we've been in with the Red Cross, or, there's counselors there. Obviously, Helium is not a replacement for psychotropic medication or professional counseling, but it's one small thing that you can do for someone else, is to give them an escape, and a virtual escape. So one of these things with the veterans that we were watching over and over again, and the thousands of tours that we did in community living centers all over, the U.S., is that VR appeared to be impacting their physiology. They weren't just watching these experiences, they were feeling them. They'd take off the headset and they would, have a deep cleansing breath. We've all seen this. And they would say, I like how I felt. Can I watch that again? And you'd watch their body soften when they're inside the goggles. And so, as a journalist and a naturally curious person, wondering, how are these experiences impacting their physiology? And can we actually create them as a storyteller in a way that actually does, downshift their nervous system or have some therapeutic benefit? And the answer to that is yes, we all know now that you can create experiences that can shift their brain patterns, their heart rate. And so we started connecting sensors, EEG sensors, heart rate, skin conductance, and blood pressure, and testing, okay, what kind of content what kind of content shifts this brain pattern or heart rate? And we were focused particularly on the high beta, or the fast activity. My co-founder, Dr. Jeff Tarrant, is a biofeedback specialist, a counseling psychologist. And so, we would have these, as I call them, nerdy play dates, where a storyteller, is with the neurofeedback specialist trying to learn, how is this media impacting physiology? And, in the 9 years of that learning process, we've gathered a lot of information on, what kind of experiences to create. So, it was not necessarily a linear path in any way, but it started in just observing how, this kind of media, they weren't just watching it, they were feeling it, and they were inside the story, which made it more memorable, more engaging, and gave them the ability to go back to those experiences in their mind.
What are some of the experiences that you've created, and what are one of your favorites that you like to go back into?
So that's like asking which baby is your favorite, right? Which chocolate is your favorite? And on my team, we all have different ones. Like there are some that I'm like, I don't know that I like one. They're like, you don't like that one? Wow. Well, I love that one. And what's fascinating is it's all about your different shared life experiences. So, when we were in Switzerland and showing an experience of a snow globe, which I love, in Switzerland, they're like, I live in a snow globe. I don't, yeah, but they loved the beach. And one of my favorite experiences, it's a crystal forest. You're essentially floating through, there's beautiful crystals on either side of you. And then, you're floating over this lagoon. And then at the end, there's a triple double rainbow, something that could never happen, doesn't happen very often in the real world, in reality. And, to me, that's what Helium is it's a triple double rainbow, in places where, we need triple double rainbows. And so that's one of my favorite experiences. We just released a beautiful one with cherry blossoms that are falling on your face. There's another one called Tree of Life that's narrated by an amazing immersive storyteller, Brian Seth Hurst. You recognize his voice. He did some pioneering work with immersive documentaries, and it's a tree of life. And you go through this tree, and then you go underwater, and then you come up and you're rejuvenated. So my expertise and what I love to do is the storytelling. And, stories are how we learn. It's how we make sense of the world. It's how it can, truly move people. So, that's what I enjoy as part of the platform. But there are about 40 different experiences Every 60 days, we add a new piece of content. Some of them are real video. Some of them are computer generated, created in a game engine. But at our core, our company is a storytelling company that creates stories with unique biodata inputs that allow you to see your feelings. Because after all, how are you supposed to learn to control what you can't see to know, am I doing this right? And so we're just displaying for the user what's historically been unseen inside the body, and then changing those environments according to their physiology so they can learn to self-regulate when they don't have the goggles.
Now, you're not really a clinical focused company. You're developing these for anyone, that wants to be able to calm, that wants to be able to understand their reactions to different places. I mean, it's really sort of neurotypically oriented. What do you see? What kinds of clinical populations might benefit from this? I mean, do you see this as a pain management tool, perhaps? I know some folks have used biofeedback to help people reduce their anxiety while they're walking through a virtual forest. And as they calm themselves based on galvanic skin response, the fog in the forest lifts. Diane Grimala had built this world, and I thought that was pretty fascinating to really have that body interaction in the world. And how do you see that playing out clinically, even aside from all the FDA stuff you have to jump through?
Yeah, and helium in its current form is not a clinical intervention. It's not meant to be used with patients, not a replacement for meds or counseling. It's a self-regulation tool. Think of it like a mental fitness tool. Just as you would exercise your body, this allows you to exercise your mind and actually see your brain patterns, your heart rate, for that self-regulation. But it is used with individuals who want to have self-management of their pain or self-management of their anxiety or self-management of their insomnia as part of a healthy lifestyle. And, there are incredible digital therapeutic interventions that require a prescription and are used with in clinical environments. And helium is not one of them. It's used with employee wellness programs. It is used with consumers as well in their home for the self-management of different conditions. That said, it's clinically validated in a number of peer-reviewed journals. And for anxiety, insomnia, and that teaching that self-regulation, and it's really a learning and a teaching tool that can you imagine if you were lifting weights and you never saw your arm go up, or you never had any body awareness of that muscle flexing or that muscle memory. And that's really just what we're trying to teach with helium, with that biofeedback and neurofeedback from fitness trackers you would already have in your home. The devices and inputs that we're using, and we're hardware agnostic, are not, these are not medical grade sensors. These are consumer grade fitness sensors. There's from smartwatches to EEG headbands, and we're constantly, incorporating more and more. That it's, bring your own wearable, however you want to train. It is a workout, a downshift for the mind. And as far as the future in clinical populations, that requires, additional research. And we're involved in a number of studies as it relates to that. But you don't need a prescription to use helium. It's not meant to be used inside the hospital. This is a fitness and a wellness tool that you can get in your break room, in your quiet room, or in the comfort of your own home.
I think that's an important point to underscore here, is that a lot of times with VR, there's extra complications for how users can access the proper equipment and the software, and Sometimes it can be onerous, and there's various levels you have to get through if you're unfamiliar. But the ability to be able to pair this with an Apple Watch or any other type device, I think that's a very smart thing to make this accessible. And I'm looking at a future in clinical work where wearables that can monitor a person's sleep, their activity, various heart rate variables, and so on over time are going to start getting greater integration in the clinical process. We just submitted a grant for treating PTSD due to sexual assault. And part of that grant involved the idea of wearing wearables, having a wearable device for the month before you even start therapy that establishes a baseline on all these things: how often you leave the house, how much activity do you get, how's your sleep been, and you get that baseline a month before therapy. And then during this, rather challenging type of therapy, person is wearing the watch, and you start to be able to pick up some of these bodily or behavioral activities in their everyday life, and start to look at that now that we have, really good tools for big data analytics and AI and so forth. We can start to look at predictors of change during the course of therapy as well as after therapy. Do they go out of their house more? Do they have more activity? Is there heart rate variability at a better level for improving health? And I just see this tech revolution and the kinds of things you're leading here with the integration of physiological variables with VR experiences as just being the way we have to go in the future. If we're going to pursue a precision medicine approach, we've got to be able to precisely or close to precision measure people in their everyday world. And so this is fascinating. Now let me throw something out that I brought up in my in our little pre-interview thing about children. Now I know you don't work with children, but I have an interest in children. I know the sponsors the podcast does. Do you ever see the Helium content being relevant for children with special needs as a calming tool, if they can adapt to a headset, given that, which we know from a lot of research with autism and, of course, with ADHD, with our cognitive leap work, that kids pretty readily adapt to these things with no relatively little ill effects. In fact, sometimes less ill effects in adults in terms of maybe getting dizzy or getting those things that we call cyber sickness. But, anxiety disorders in children, or children that have had adverse childhood experiences and, are hyped up and things that have an impact later in life in their medical and psychological functioning. Do you see what are the challenges for trying to translate what you've done to a younger population? I mean, how young do you go? I guess you don't have a way of monitoring it if it's a consumer product. You don't know if a parent's buying it for their kid. But what's your thoughts on that?
So usually ages, we go by the goggle manufacturers guidelines, ages 12 and above. So we do have youth and young adults that are using Helium at schools to learn to self-regulate. And it's measured mindfulness. Just as they're having yoga classes and learning about yoga, this is a way that they can learn about their mind and their heart, and how what they think about up here has a direct impact, on their physiology. And, to me, as a storyteller, very excited about that as it relates to youth and young adults. Even though Helium isn't designed for that, it is an engaging medium for youth, because the data, the biometric data from their Apple Watch or any fitness tracker, EEG headband that they're using, is no longer a flat number on their wrist or in a mobile device. It's spatial, and it's set out into the world, and they can better understand, oh, when I quiet my mind, the fast activity in my brain goes down and my solar system lights up around me. And when, it's not, it darkens. And that is a visual that they can take outside of the goggles and, quickly learn that, when I quiet my mind, my aura turns green like a traffic light. And when I breathe more, my environment changes. And I think that's, visual markers are important, not just for the youth, but for adults as well. And because even without words, they can better understand that. But there are parents who've contacted us. We have one of them on our blog who, she uses it with her daughter to try to help her self-manage during her panic attacks, because it's visual and it's immersive. And she can learn that self-regulation. Then if she has one when she's away, that she has some kind of, reminder of a fitness routine, like a mental fitness routine that she can go through.
I think that's so important. I think we tend to underestimate. We think kids are, so resilient, but the data shows that, there's long-term impacts when the needs of children's mental health issues are not addressed. Yeah.
Even
Okay.
in trauma victims, Helium is used with some victims of gender-based violence in Iraq right now. And some of those women, when they're working with their therapists, and they tell them to imagine a safe place, they can't even imagine, and they can't go to that place in their mind. And so, I see you shaking your head. I mean, it is providing that safe place, that stored memory that they can then go back to in a stressful or traumatic situation.
Yep. Yep. Brilliant. Um, okay. Now, what has your experience been with traditional medicine? I mean, have you, in your interactions with doctors and, psychologists and whatever, have you had any pushback on making this available as a consumer product? Is there, what's your experience with that?
Yeah. I'm not, obviously, and my background is not in medicine. It's in media and storytelling and video storytelling. And so I've had to pair myself with other people on my team who do have that expertise. But in the early days, which is one of the reasons why, we got and partnered on a bunch of research to get the product validated, because, in the early days, they're like, I don't know. Are those butterflies really hatching from your EEG brain pattern switching? How do you know? And so, we had to prove that out in not one, but, pretty soon we'll have more than 10 peer-reviewed journals. But that was good, because even though our product wasn't designed originally for clinical validations or clinical populations, we still it forced us, as you should, get that clinical validation for your product, even though it's going to be in the wellness sector. So we got pushback in a good way that taught us about trauma. I was not, as a storyteller, aware of trauma-informed language. That's something that we had to learn. We would create these stories, and then, we work with psychologists, and my partner's like, hold on, you can't say that in a story, because the language, you don't want it to be triggering. So, as storytellers, we really had to learn that new language and continue to adapt those stories to ensure that we don't have language that's triggering in there. And we have a lot to learn. I mean, even though, you have been in the industry for decades, there are, new nuances coming up all of the time that, we need to regularly pair ourselves with, clinicians and researchers who can help us educate, because telling a story through the filter of a fixed rectangle is very different in an immersive story where the storyteller does not have control of the frame because the frame is moving inside the sphere. And for a storyteller, that's incredibly difficult to tell stories, just to tell stories that way. But we learned and continue to learn with that feedback that we get from clinicians.
Storytelling keeps coming up because it is so vitally relevant in this field, and oftentimes kind of like just thought of as just part of it. You have a little bit of that and it helps, but it's, I think, really essential. In fact, our center at USC was based on the Army's interest in integrating Hollywood storytelling into VR simulations for training. Because as you said, that's a primal form of learning. I mean, when you look at these cave wall paintings, they're not just art. They're ways that people told stories that were functionally relevant to their survival, operating on the hunt and so on. And it's so essential to help guide a person to experience whatever it is you've created with that narrative story. I just find that to be something that's sometimes not as appreciated. It's extremely important.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
now there's great, there's new inputs that we're telling these stories with. That people aren't just passively watching the media; they're feeling it. They're seeing their brain patterns and heart rate,
yep,
and so it's forced us to learn an entirely different genre of storytelling where the user is influencing the narrative.
yep. We had built something for a museum, the Heroes Hall Museum down in Orange County, by the fairgrounds down here. And it's a veteran museum. And they wanted to do something aside from posters and videos that explained, technology and veteran healthcare. So we ended up taking from our PTSD content. It was 3D graphic, but we made a spherical video of the content that we could manipulate and change. And we had a veteran that had served in Afghanistan narrate the story of his experience there between walking down a street that he had apprehension, a bomb going off, people screaming, him in the hospital, and we were able to create all those simulations in the world while he's narrating. And he told this story. It was a 7-minute piece. We had it at the museum for like 8 months. Over 100,000 people tried it.
Wow.
We had Samsung had donated the old Samsung Gear VR. They donated 10 headsets. So we had all these stations around. So after they walked around and saw that content, they could put on a headset for 7 minutes and be in an immersive narrative. And the feedback we got from that was just tremendous. And I think, now I put my clinical hat on, I think, well, maybe this is something that we should give out to spouses of people that were deployed, to give them a little more of an experience of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what their spouse that was in war went through. I'm going to dredge that up and send it to you so you can try that. It might be something. It's open source now, so we can just give it to you if you had an interest in
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to see it. We have a military spouse on our team, Kari Arbova. She's a spouse of a Marine, and yeah, that's a great idea because you never really think about the trauma that the spouse is going through.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
warfighter is
Yeah, they're
deployed.
part of it. They're part of it. Okay, we only got a few minutes left. I want to get to a couple of other types of questions. What's your view of the current state of VR? And what are things that excite you about the field beyond your own work? Are there companies or applications or just the context?
Yeah, so the state of VR, I mean, it's hard, right? What we're doing is hard. And it's probably, you're shaking your head. It's been that way for decades. But I mean, just when you think it's getting better, there are certain things that complicate it. And when I say complicated, the industry just moving so fast, you just get an app that's deployed and has an installed user base on one headset, and then the manufacturer sunsets that headset and is no longer accepting software updates. So there's frustration with that, in that in some ways we need to slow down in the iterations of the hardware. But I get that companies, they have to constantly be creating new hardware because that's their business model and they need repeatable revenue. But in other ways, tremendously exciting as it relates to AI and biodata inputs, which is what we're passionate about. And storytelling, and at the form factor is coming down, and what Apple's doing. Apple Vision Pro came out, and it was a hustle, but we got our app launched on it. If you have an AVP, definitely search Helium and download it. We'd love your feedback. It integrates with Apple Watch, and very soon EEG headbands as well. And we're adding more compatible wearables all the time. But that device I'm very excited about because it has the ecosystem of the App Store messages, everything that you need that is in tandem with those immersive spaces. Your camera roll. I have a 3-month-old grandson, and I can pull up his spatial photos and be inside his photos, even though I thought I captured it in a 2D form. So I'm very excited about where that is headed, and also the fact that it's attached to SEO from app stores, which allows vendors and companies to find that user base. But it's still hard. I'm really excited about the collaboration among our industry and how we're all swimming in the deep end together, and recognizing that we need to help each other and collaborate on projects. You need not just one intervention, you need a whole suite of interventions. So yeah, excited, but the industry is still hard.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah. All right. Last question, because we got to get to user or viewer questions. If you had unlimited money in 2 years to do anything you wanted in this space, do you have a pet project you would like to do? I ask this question of everybody at the end.
Yeah, my ultimate experience in VR, when I lost my home in a tornado. I grew up in a very small town, and I mean, I can go back to that home in my mind. It was, a old 100-year-old home. But I would love to go back to that home and take, photos, still photos, and hear the creak of the wood floor on the steps as I went up. I would love to go back there. So if I had unlimited resources, that would be it. And also, as far as unlimited resources, getting VR goggles for every single underrepresented group, whether that be veteran or whatever. And there are brands out there that could underwrite the cost of those goggles. So, that would be a great project to see more brands step forward, because that's all they need for that healing is the hardware. That's Absolutely. What is, that's the barrier between them and, getting some relief to whatever it is that they're struggling with is the hardware. So that would be a great use of those funds too.
That's a good one. All right.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt here because time really flies. I can't believe it. It seems like we just started, but I did want to open it up for some questions and answers for a couple minutes if we can. As a reminder, the participants joining from the webinar can directly ask a question through the Q&A window, while participants from the YouTube live stream, they can also ask questions in live chat. So we have one comment here that I wanted to read out. It's not a question, but I'm not sure everyone has been able to see this, but it says, Hi, Sarah and Skip. Veteran Grace Esposito here. I don't have any questions for you. I want to share with the webinar of people what the two of you have done for me. The impact changes of my life over the past years with Skip, works in research and PTSD, and Sarah's Helium app offered to me and keeping in touch with me. You both are making differences in veterans' lives in reimagining veterans' healthcare. I thank both of you greatly, a veteran whose life has been renewed.
Oh, man.
What do you say about that, huh?
I mean, what do you say? You know, she did the hard work, obviously, and you know it's our pleasure to do that for them. One comment from Grace that she's taught us a lot. She was talking about how she was in the Apple Vision Pro and how she scanned her face for the first time, and she was able to see herself outside of herself and the profound impact that had on her own self-awareness. So I always enjoy how she talks passionately about the industry, and that was just a really neat comment that this medium allows other people to see themselves in a way that they've never seen themselves before. So Grace, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's better than the paycheck. Well, you gotta have the paycheck, but
Yeah.
that's really that's the good stuff. Thank you.
So Sarah, I have a question for you, which is, you talked about your journey on how you've created Helium and how the founding of the company and what really drove you to that. Um, what do you see in the future for Helium? What is out there that you want to accomplish with this company and make available to the people out there?
We just want to educate people that they have healing powers inside themselves. I would love to see helium in every area of stress, that anytime that you thought about something that sucked, that you had to go through, that that there could be a way that you could instantly escape. The future for helium is great as it relates to anxiety, as it relates to sleep. We have a sister product called Sleepium, where all of that content is meant to be viewed in a reclined position. And the future holds great collaborations with other immersive media companies, other wearable companies. And yeah, we're just delighted to be able to have the opportunity to continue telling stories.
That's great. That's great. Now, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs that are starting in the immersive tech business? What what words of wisdom? Because you've gone through a lot with this in terms of kind of developing into a much broader category, it sounds like, than what you first started out to do.
Surround yourself with good mentors. Give yourself atta-girls and atta-boys, because not a lot of you're going to need it when you're going through a very nascent industry where the software, the hardware, the ecosystems aren't even developed yet. So definitely surround yourself with some battle buddies who've been there, done that, and can educate you on that process. As it relates to entrepreneurship and like raising money, and only raise the amount that you need. That was some very wise words from us in the early days of our company. And granted, we are in an area in the Midwest that lacks traditional access to venture capital, but and a lot of companies raised tens of millions of dollars and then flamed out because they had overhired and their product hadn't developed alongside those nascent revenue streams. So obviously raising money was difficult for us. Building the product was difficult for us. And, build your business on revenue, right? And at the end of the day, you need to have repeatable revenue streams that are self-sustaining. And your product needs to be providing, a real value for people. If I had a crystal ball and to look back on it, would I have done some things differently? Yes. But we are a very small company that has survived the VR industry for 8 years now, and that's
That's something.
that's something. And we haven't raised a whole lot of money. So, we kept it lean. We continued to quickly iterate, and, focused on our core value proposition, which is, these very unique stories that are told with biodata inputs from, a variety of fitness trackers.
That's great advice. I love that.
What about how to market? Because Sherry, I know that's the area that you have an expertise in. I mean, how do you get somebody that would never stumble into a VR conference, or their doctor wouldn't know anything about it? How do you get it into their headspace? It's getting easier now, certainly. The visibility of VR is much better, but any ideas on that, either of you?
Certainly collaborations, what Sherry is doing with VRD Health Tech amplifies our voice around the world. I mean, she is putting immersive media and headsets from Liberia to Costa Rica and everywhere. So certainly, partnerships are key. And like I said, we are all swimming in the deep end. So the more that we can lock arms with each other, and recognize that the way that we grow that industry is together through partners, affiliate partners, and even teaming up with seemingly competitive products, because again, there are many flavors of the same intervention, and people want a variety of different things. So I really think that collaboration is key. What do you think, Sherry?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Sarah. I think collaboration in an evolving and maturing market. Okay, this is still new, so it's not at a point where we can really compete with each other as much. We really need to come together in order to lift the industry, and to accelerate that adoption of immersive tech within the general population. And so I think the way we do that is by creating a greater voice together. And that's what we're trying to do at VRD Health Tech. And, it's only through partners, but with people who really see the bigger picture, who come together with us, such as Sarah and Skip. Your advice and wisdom and guidance is so appreciated as we go through this journey together. And, I'm excited because I think we're so close. I mean, people are adopting this technology. They love it. And the more we make it available, the more accessible, the better.
Cool.
So I think with that, I hadn't really planned on ending it, but I want to say thank you so much, to the viewers out there who joined this episode of Immersive Tech Talk. And I hope you've learned from, our amazing guest today. Sarah, thank you so much. Thank you again to our incredible host, Skip Rizzo. So for the audience out there, the video recordings of the event will be available on our YouTube channel. Please feel free to share it with anyone who might be interested in the topic. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next event and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Keep going, everyone.
Bye.